Oh wait, is that? I
live.
didn't do the. We are live, but I didn't do the local recording. So I'm just gonna ask you,
Dramatic
gentlemen, as we're
pause.
getting started, if y'all wouldn't mind setting that up. But yes, we are live on a Friday night with 5 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy to talk about. So in just a moment, we got to sync up some recording on our end, but I am recording locally now. I want to make sure that we
Please
have
stand by.
the show out for the podcast audience.
Fatheree, are you saying, are we doing Audacity here?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Are we recording
let's
locally?
see.
Yeah.
Oh.
I didn't flip the switch on StreamYard. So
Oh. Okay. Sorry. Let me get mine ready.
All right. I guess I'm recording. I'm good.
I did not know. I'm sorry. It's you're watching the sausage being made.
That's all right. Pretty exciting stuff. We're here in the Jeffries
Adobe,
tubes.
Like,
Well, yeah, I see,
sorry.
Joel and Starfleet Sohel and Boatwreck are all commenting in the chat, and there's some other people watching, so I'm glad that people are... It's weird because we don't really know what level, how far in the show everyone has watched, so we're only going to be talking about like the first 5, so no spoilers or anything after episode 5. We're just going to be focused on those first 5 of season 2, but within those 5 there's a lot to unpack, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And
Absolutely.
we're all 3 ready to go, so without any further ado, let's get the show started. I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
I'm Aaron.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 294th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, Episodes 1 through 5. So that's going to be Into the Breach, Parts 1 and 2, Who Saves the Saviors, Temporal Mechanics 101, and Observer's Paradox. Five of the 20 brand spanking new episodes that dropped on us this week.
Fatheree, did I see that there was like a different title somewhere for Observer's Paradox? Something like it had Spiral in it or something?
You might have seen that.
I was looking it up somewhere and I saw one that said Spiral and I was like, oh, was that like an early title version?
I know that the episodes released in France before the rest of the world were given different episode titles.
Oh, interesting.
So
Maybe I was seeing
been,
something based on that.
You might have been looking at something based on that. Or they were like translated differently or something. I know that there's like, like these titles don't match up the titles that some people were thinking, but...
I like it. You know what, Father?
It's just episode 01, 02. So it's like it's not spoiling anything that way, which is I kind of like that.
That's true. Although I like their titles, so.
Well, no, I mean, once you actually see it, but I meant like in articles and stuff like that.
Right. A little bit of vagary or like a little small differences like that kind of fits the timeline looseness that is part of
maybe the titles change as the show goes on. That would be interesting.
Oh yeah, every time you load up Netflix, the titles are going to be slightly different.
We're all from slightly unsynced timelines.
That fits my brain today.
But yeah, so if people are curious how we're going to be covering Prodigy Season 2, every week we'll just talk about another 5 episodes. We'll just spend about 15 minutes or so on each one and then move on to the next. Some will probably take up more time than others to discuss, but The thing with Prodigy is that it does have a very tight serialized arc. So if you are going to release a whole season of a show and just drop all 20 episodes, it's not a bad show to do it with. If you did that with Strange New Worlds, it might be a bit weird.
Yeah,
but
or like
here
if
it
thinking back
works.
to like Deep Space Nine or something, it's just like, wow, that would just be really hard to watch that much that quickly.
Before we get into these 5 episodes, I do want to give a big thank you and shout out to the Tex-Trek Patreon crew that keep the weekly live show going. So thank you so very much. Starfleet Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Quark Spar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, Joel Vallis, Benjinium, Arthur Lamoureux, and our anonymous supporters. We do like to celebrate with our patrons every month with a monthly Patreon watch party. Our next one is scheduled for Saturday, July 13th, and it's going to be a fun one. We have a double feature planned. We're going to be doing Strange New Worlds, Those Old Scientists, the crossover episode with Lower Decks, followed by Deep Space Nine's Take Me Out to the Holosuite, the baseball episode from Season 7. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and it's always a fun crowd. We'll be watching those July 13th. You can join the Tex-Trek Patreon at various different tiers, but if you can come in as little as $2 a month, that'll get into those monthly watch parties, and there's some additional perks if you can afford to be more generous as well. But I'm really looking forward to those 2 episodes.
Related to Deep Space Nine, if you start watching tomorrow, 1 episode a day, you will hit the future tense part 1 and 2 on the day that it happens. So you can experience the Bell Riots on September 1st.
So if you want the Bell Riots in real time,
yeah,
I mean,
start watching
anyway.
now.
It feels like the world's kind of trying to accommodate Star Trek, so for better or worse, that's a thing.
If you watch Past Tense parts 1 and 2 and like some of the things they are saying in that, like, oh, we just gotta like get this like out to the world, and when they see it in China and the rest of the world, they'll like it turns out like, oh, we actually like live in a world where you can like live stream genocide, and it's still like it takes society a while to actually give a shit about anything. So I kind of wish we lived in the world of the Bell Riots, or at least something as benign as that. But I guess even Deep Space Nine couldn't predict the darkness of the real life 2020s.
And fiction always likes its kind of big moments of victory. The "we caught you on tape" moment, which doesn't always in the real world translate into the villain just giving up and going to jail. So,
but that's why we have a fictional utopia set in the 2380s that we can talk about instead.
We're aspiring to it. We're trying to get there.
Well, I guess we should start with the first episode, Into the Breach, parts 1 and 2. But with it being a 2-parter, I guess we can kind of cross over into the second part. But I'm curious, just right off the bat, just y'all's reactions, just with like that first episode. How good did that feel to have Prodigy back? Like, Dave, I don't know, would you like to go first? Just what was your reaction to see like your first new episode of Prodigy you've gotten to see in 18 months? How did that feel?
So I felt like I was right back with friends again with these kids. They did a great job of sort of recapping their personalities. And I thought it was interesting. I don't know if I've assessed this quite right, but it felt like everybody was pushing forward a little bit, so that we saw some new development. Rock Talk really falling into the role of kind of the orderliness of Starfleet. And what do you call it? Oh my gosh.
Jankum?
Jankum, thank you. Jankum trying to clean up his act a little bit. And even Zero has yearnings for some corporeal loving, and yet Dal is interestingly the sort of centerpiece of the crew. He was the one who seemed like he was dragging a little behind, and I thought that was interesting. He reminded me of Kirk actually in the Kelvin movies, where maybe the least mature person in the room. But I immediately liked seeing them, and the beautiful shots of the new Voyager up to date. There was already right away some twists and turns. The Doctor they just get right to it. And what else? I felt like they didn't lag behind in getting rolling and introducing, Nova Squadron. as like
Yeah.
sort of rivals, as frenemies for them to engage with. Just broadly speaking, really good start for me. No major notes. What about you, Aaron?
Uh, for me, it's also a little bit personal, just because of the whole airplane banner thing that we participated in, standing in front of Netflix, and so
Right.
it felt like there's a like, oh, good, getting sunburned actually paid off, kind of a thing. So, but yeah, no, I really liked it. I like that you can tell that it's setting all that stuff up, but it doesn't feel like it. You're not watching it with like, okay, here's now when they recap things. It's just it felt natural as opposed to like just laying out the narrative.
In general, this is something that really started falling into place for me when we were watching Deep Space Nine. I was like, wow, these episodes flow so organically into one another. I never know when there might be a little 2 or 3 parter in there. Something mentioned 10 episodes ago might come up, or a season ago might come up, and it built on each other. And, honestly, Disco was not great at that always. It didn't always feel organic. Prodigy is back and like doing it right. I feel like it builds kind of nicely, and I never know quite where it's going.
Yeah, I didn't watching that. I didn't feel like, oh, I can tell what's going to happen in this season. There was no like real like, oh, I've guessed it all the way to the end. Which sometimes you can with Star Trek. And
Sure. Aaron, I know Fatheree has watched them all. I have only watched the 5. Where are you at?
10.
You're at 10. Okay, so you're
5
like
more
the
episodes.
the
But I
sort
kind
of
of want
the
to just wait, because I don't love watching them this much at a time. It's like it feels.
Yeah.
It's almost like I just got a bucket of ice cream and now I have just eaten it all, and then like
A lot of
I'm gonna
sugar.
feel sick and I'm not going to have any ice cream later. It's sort of like
right.
So
Yeah,
I kind of want to absorb it a
format-wise-
little bit. So I've been sort of like I just rewatched 1 through 5 and just sort of kind of. So yeah. And
I always liked our the Tex-Trek format, where we, broadly speaking, do an episode a week and get to kind of zero in and really chew on it and think about it and talk about whatever moral conundrum it presents. And this is a bit much, but I can 5 is within, I think, my scope, especially since these are shorter episodes.
So that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me, Nova Squad is the one. Kind of like, how people think about Section 31. I'm like, why is there a Nova Squad still? Because it's like the best of the best, which would be fine, except these are like the most kind of snobbish, like they think they're better than each other, somebody else, as opposed to they are better.
Right.
And
it doesn't
even
quite
like
seem to fit Starfleet's egalitarianism to have
that's
these
kind of like,
guys who
why
are
is-
like, oh, this is the
Yeah.
hot shots. These are the guys who are the real good ones.
And this is 3 years after Tom Paris on Lower Decks. So it's like there should be like, well, maybe we should reevaluate this idea of like creating kind of like people with big heads. I don't know. It just seemed, and I was like, okay, maybe this will redeem them. But then the first time we hear them, like it's like, oh hey, it's Never Squadron, like
Yeah.
the
I think
Janeway's
it-
problems or whatever. I'm like, sheesh.
it kind of works in some ways best, maybe almost when they're in a show, or like I think it fits in a show like this that has a slightly larger than life take on Star Trek.
Yeah.
You can veer a little bit into those sort of tropes a bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree with you. I think that's a fair point.
And it's not horrible. It wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but it was just sort of like, it's something that kind of stuck out a little bit to me.
I was immediately back engaged in Prodigy. Like after just like 1 episode, it really like kind of shocked me. Like, oh wow, like was the show like always this good, or like was it just like had I just
now.
missed it? I think it is like a little bit more refined in season 2, definitely. But it was always great. Like season 1, it just continuously improves, and that kind of continues into season 2. And I agree completely with what y'all are saying about how it is nice to. I mean, I love spending an entire week focused on 1 episode of Star Trek. That's largely what I do these days. But this was maybe the only time this will ever happen. It was the first time. Who knows if they'll ever drop an entire season of Star Trek altogether? I mean, hopefully, because we want like season 3, and if that happens, it'll probably be on Netflix, so it'll probably be another big episode drop like this. But even then, they might split it into 10 and 10 or something like that. This might be like a once in a lifetime event of like an entire season of Star Trek being released in a day. So it was definitely a new experience for me. It wasn't my preferred way to watch the show, but it was definitely a fun and new and exciting way for me to experience a season of Star Trek. The first episode, Into the Breach, the part one was written by the Hagemans, and part two by Aaron Waltke. And I'm just going to quickly read the synopsis on part one to recap it. But on the Into the Breach part one, Dow and his friends board Janeway's ship to investigate the wormhole created by the Protostar. Tired of his training, Dow longs for some action. So basically, it was just establishing the mystery on. It was establishing Voyager A, the new setting, some new characters like the Doctor and Nova Squad, and then the mystery of there's something on the ship that they're not telling us about. There's some secret mission, and I loved that the stuff that we saw before the clip, the stuff that they showed at San Diego, or I'm sorry, at Vegas last year, that the clip of the Doctor meeting the kids and taking them to the Voyager A, like that's literally the first thing the first thing we see is a little bit of slice of life stuff with like Murph doing his training and Dal skipping class and whatnot. Rock Talk giving Tribble lectures or whatever, but like after that they show us like the thing that we saw, and then it segues into this wonderful Voyager A tour, and I love that ship. It's a super cool ship. The other scene that stood out to me was like the good conversation between the Doctor and Zero about growing beyond one's programming. That's a phrase that I frequently use, and I thought that was a cool moment. And
he and the Doctor have a lot in common in some ways.
They do. Yeah, and they're both like the medical people. Like Zero is the medical officer of this cast of this group. True. And like when they were sneaking around on the ship, like we're doing some snooping around, and then Jankum sees Zero and Dow and is like, oh, y'all are causing trouble. I'm gonna join in with whatever y'all are doing. And it made me realize, like, I actually do like it when Star Trek is telling these stories from like this child perspective, from like this young teenager point of view. Like there's some stuff I love with Wesley Crusher. There's some stuff I love with Jake Sisko. There's some stuff I love with Naomi Wildman. And I'm more excited now for the Starfleet Academy show. I know that like those kids are going to be like a little bit more college age, but I think there's a lot Star Trek has a lot to gain from having like that youthful perspective. So I'm glad that's going to continue.
That kind of got you all in on that as a concept.
Yeah.
Fatheree, you mentioned the mystery, and I did just want to add, that was one of those kind of neat, unexpected things. I kind of imagined that the show would begin, and they'd be like, 6 months into their, time on Voyager, and they'd be shadowing crewmen and doing stuff, and that does happen to some degree. But I liked that there was a mystery. That's like a good immediate hook for something. And so having the kids kind of prowling around the Jeffries tubes and stuff like that gave it a sense of adventurousness and fun right out of the gate that I was not planning for.
And cockamamie plans.
Yeah. Related to that, I was like, they're going to be a mission that they're uniquely qualified. So we're going to bring you on the ship and then completely ignore you and let you run around unattended. Like, that just seemed a little odd. That was, to me, it's just like, Janeway, whatever happens now is on your head, because you did not, nobody watched these kids.
It is true. That's a little bit odd to do that. I kind of thought it was one of those things where she's like, I secretly want and expect them to find it, but she clearly didn't. I think she was probably had the notion that I don't know, maybe in a way that time was on their side.
It's a huge ship too, by the way. There's 800 people. Like people have their kids on this ship. There's schools on this ship. Like we see like a Bolian having a baby. Like there's like a lot of civilians running around. It'd be hard to like you would have to like. It would be like a very restrictive to like confine someone to their quarters or something. I think
I can't remember who it was, but somebody, it was either on Twitter or something that we heard. It's like, they were complaining that it was clear that these kids and Janeway were the only people on the ship. I'm like, what show were you watching? It was very weird.
Every once in a while, when the kids were prowling around, I did think some of the decks looked a little kind of empty,
sparse.
A little sparse. Some of the limitations of just whether they have assets or time to do the crowd stuff. But there was also lots of times that they did have crowds. I suppose in a perfect world, I'd want a little bit more. I at least see how somebody got there, because there's at least a few scenes where that occurred to me.
Yeah.
But they were kind of usually countered by other scenes where, I would see see more crewmen.
If you're being realistic, like I think that if like a Galaxy class, they said you could go probably the entire evening without ever seeing anyone in a hallway in a ship that big. So it's possible that you would see fewer people in this ship. It's not as big, obviously, but it's still much bigger than the original Voyager.
Yeah. I was surprised at how large the Voyager A is, but I do love the ship. It looks cool.
Yeah. I need to redo my poster so it actually looks correct. I came kind of close, but a little squishy.
Just a little bit of a bit of fly in the ointment. Although I think it was really well filmed. I like the beauty shots of it, a la motion picture. To me, it's one of those ones that's a little overly designed and a little overly armory looking. It gives it a sort of martial military flair that I don't
Borg
like.
plating that they
And then I wanted it to look a little bit more like the original Voyager. I was ready for
as much uniqueness or charm to it or something. There's something that's like just slightly a little generic.
But it's very in line. It's very in line with like the Sovereign class, and just like
it looked a lot like the Sovereign.
And just like I never liked the fat one, the Enterprise D. I've never gotten on board with the Galaxy class. I don't blame her. But I've always loved the Sovereign since 1996. I was like, wow, they fixed Picard's ship, and now I kind of feel that way. I was never crazy about the Intrepid class Voyager. I think it looks good from some angles.
The Intrepid always needed longer nacelles. That really would have helped it.
That really helps it. But yeah, I'm like, oh, they fixed Janeway's ship. I consider the Voyager a big improvement.
So, Fatheree, you just want to see everything turn into the Sovereign. I think I see a pattern here.
I like the Sovereign-y look more than the Galaxy class look. Yeah, totally, 100%.
You and Carol Freeman would not get along well.
No, yeah, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum with late 24th century starship design.
I like the more unique ships, both the Galaxy class and the original Intrepid. Even sort of warts and all, like they feel more unique to me. So.
I think my favorite bridge of all ships is the Intrepid. The original.
That's your favorite bridge?
Yeah. It seems to have lasted the best. Stood up the test of time because they used kind of neutral color palettes and.
Yeah.
Just to bring up Gwen and her storyline, so she's been separated from the rest of the kids to go do her diplomatic mission to Solom, and this episode does a good job of refreshing us with that. They don't have recaps on Prodigy. It doesn't have previously on Star Trek Prodigy, and it's never had those. Those. They refresh us within the context of the episodes.
Yeah, usually there's a bit of exposition that's pretty well handled, I think.
When Dow and Gwen have their Skype call, and he tries to ask about their relationship, and then gets really nervous when she was frozen. That was so hilarious. I thought that was
Aaron,
pretty
right?
good.
I asked him, it's like, you wrote this, didn't you? He's like, oh yeah, that was me.
Didn't he say? Doesn't Dow say something like, "I'm being very vulnerable right now, and you're not reacting, and it's making me feel bad," or something like that?
Oh yeah.
I felt that. I really liked Gwen's kind of. You could feel when I think there was a Trill co-pilot or whatever when she was arriving at Solom. That wasn't that a Trill?
I believe so. Yes.
And I felt like she had the weight of the world on her. She really looked kind of like. She didn't kind of have the confidence to do this, and
she felt like a real kid. She felt like a real kid, kind of in over their head and kind of unsure and uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a weird. Maybe I was wrong, but it looked like the same person who was in the ship was also the same woman who was piloting the Voyager. They looked so close that it's did they just forget that she was there?
That's what I was thinking, but I think they were probably just reusing the CGI asset, but she has a twin who's also in Starfleet. It's happened before.
Well, it was in Starfleet.
That's true. That, as far as I know, that ship just got straight blown up, right?
Yeah. Or there was the emergency.
That's in part 2, yeah. But
sorry.
I'll save that till we talk about that. But
okay.
Before that, when the kids discover the Infinity on the Voyager in the secret shuttle bay, and they kind of do the Sam Raimi Spider-Man thing of hiding on the ceiling and hoping the people don't look up and see you. That was kind
Tysus
of
needs to get his peripheral vision fixed. I think he's he should notice some of that.
You know, it is funny. I manage a retail store, and it is funny how much people kind of don't notice. Like, you kind of just look where your focus is,
Yeah.
and you don't tend to look a lot around you. And sometimes there could be a new display or something looming right over you, and you don't even notice it. It's. I feel like weirdly that's kind of realistic.
I was thinking it was weirdly realistic too, but like
I think it was
in a
the
way
dripping is what I meant. Just
Yeah. Get the cleaner soon.
He's just like, oh, I guess there's a leak somewhere. It's like, well, what leaks liquid that looks like that? But I guess something does.
That was my question.
I mean, who knows? You know, with all the variety of ships that pass through, the shuttle bay on a starship, or maybe all the different containment stuff they might have.
The
But
ship
you
itself reminds me.
You immediately think that something sus must be going on if there's a cloaked Starfleet ship, and Jankum even points that out. It's like, well, cloaked ships are supposed to be illegal, so.
Yeah.
But it's very like Star Trek Insurrection when Picard and Data are like, wait a minute, why is there a cloaked Federation ship on this planet? What exactly is going on here?
The ship kind of looks like the drop ship from Aliens a little bit, like the front part of it.
Yeah, and it was based on like the Maquis ships, I guess to give it like some Federation roots.
The Federation fighters or whatever. That's what Aaron said.
It has less the look of the sort of refined curves of a larger starship, Starfleet starship, and more a look of being somewhat practical, a pragmatic kind of hastily put together sort of thing. It's cool looking, but it's interesting because it looks a
like
little bit hurried.
Yeah, but it kind of becomes I guess, your substitute Protostar. Like you need the kids to get in their own ship to get into some trouble in this 5-episode arc.
That's a good way to put it.
It kind of serves that purpose.
It's their little Defiant.
I do love what's a little smaller than the Defiant, but I like a ship like about this size that like you could still fit in your shuttle bay of a larger ship, or kind of like what Book had in Discovery for a while before it had to get blown up because him and Tarka put spore drive technology in it, and that would have broke the show to have 2 spore drive ships for too long. But I like that. I think that's good for a Star Trek show if you can have your main hero ship, but then if you need to like send people on like a secondary hero ship, they would occasionally do that on Voyager a little bit with actually Neelix's ship a couple of times. I guess with like the Delta Flyer after they established it. If I was like designing a Starfleet ship, I think I would want it to have like a little like detachable or some type of like ship that'd be like the equivalent of this, like a good like away mission ship.
They could have used it in Voyager. They had the Arrow shuttle that came out underneath like that. Always, my headcanon is that it's the plating on the outside of that, but the ship itself isn't inside there. It was just empty because they like it didn't have the ship, so they just put the cap on it essentially and sent it on its way. Oops. I'm talking with my hands again.
But do y'all have anything else on episode 1? I guess like the only other thing I was going to point out was I did like the line. I laughed at the line for explain it to me like I'm a Dal, getting into like the temporal mechanics. I liked that.
Speaking of lines, we got timey-wimey, so we've got a Doctor Who reference.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And what is it? While the Doctor is a highly skilled physician, he is a terrible actor.
Oh yeah, that was great. I loved when they were like figuring out the mystery of it all. I did want to mention it was a nice, concise storytelling to have them each assigned to their own sort of division or their area of interest, so that you get a quick, okay, this person is going to be associated with this thing.
You also get a good overview of the ship in general, then that way too. It's kind of
that's true.
out.
Yeah, Dave, that's something you said, like, when they introduced the Defiant in Deep Space Nine. You were like, they should have had a tour in this first episode to show all the different sets, all the different parts of the ship.
Yeah. But just as I'm skimming my notes, I don't have anything else really notable to say. I noticed it is the first time I guess they said Temporal Mechanics 101, which will become kind of a recurring
They're
joke.
going to say that a lot.
As Dal steadfastly for a while refuses to do any studying of it until he absolutely has to.
I just like the fact that you can watch like a little 15-minute video and like, oh, I know temporal mechanics now.
Well, he did fast forward at some point to get to chapter 5. But
doesn't seem like that's a good idea.
But it does seem like something he'd do.
Oh yeah, no, I just.
Let's move on to episode 2, Into the Breach, part 2, written by Aaron J. Walke. directed by Patrick Cribbs and Andrew Schmidt. The synopsis says, Gwen runs into a familiar foe on the planet Solum. Janeway reveals the true stakes of the mission to Dow and his friends. But yeah, like in this episode, I did love seeing more of Solemn and actually, seeing like some of the people on the streets and just, it starts to feel like more of a place and less of a concept. So you kind of get like a little concerned of like, okay, maybe I don't want this place to just, turn into a Civil War destroyed shithole in 52 years.
The city and world or the Tomorrowland or whatever, it looks kind of like that a little bit. Got a Sid Mead sort of feel to it.
Yeah, it's very beautiful looking. And I kind of, it's, back when we were talking about Discovery and Book's Planet got destroyed, I had sort of felt like I needed to see some more population centers in order to get that sense of place and that it was the meaningfulness of it. They had done the personal thing with, what was it, his nephew? But they hadn't really given me a great sense of the city, of the planet being populated. So they immediately did here. Good job, guys. You got me on board.
We even have like the different level, like the Undercity, basically, or something. Sort of like where the less fortunate Solums live.
It hadn't occurred to me, or if it had occurred to me, it had been so long ago I had forgotten. But for some reason, I didn't think of the possibility of Essentia going to Solemn before Gwen and basically getting there like weeks ahead and already setting her agenda in motion and kind of radicalizing these people to be the militarized xenophobes like her.
Yeah, she's actually really pretty scary in this. In addition to the fact that she's clearly a physical threat, like we know she's a dangerous and kind of really aggressive fighter. But yeah, she's like, she immediately takes the planet's, the kind of the prejudices we know they have, and just starts turning that fear level up to 11 so that, she's, I guess in her mind, she's preparing them for the worst.
Dave doesn't like it when I use the term body count talking about Star Trek sometimes. I think that's like too like dark and morbid. But they do really like up the body count with Star Trek Prodigy like in season 2. Like here, like in the second episode, you have like death almost immediately with when the shuttle pilot is blown up.
So they just dropped her off to deal with them on their own. Like I know that she should be there like alone to start with maybe, or just but it feels like there's the pattern here of like, let's just drop the kids off, things will be fine.
It is a little bit of like I think it's slightly the buy-in on the show that sometimes they're going to entrust these kids to do a little bit more than really they should.
Yeah,
I
mean,
actually
they explain that there's no other ships available beyond like the Voyager A is like the only ship that can be spared to investigate the wormhole because everyone else is busy with the Romulan evacuation.
That is true.
That's probably why they could only send like one like long range shuttle to take Gwen to Solom.
I love
there's no lack of what is it? People who make first contact, like ambassadors or something like that. It feels like we always have. They're like a dime a dozen. You could have grabbed one of them at least.
Yeah, but like the thing was like they had to send like the one Vonnegut to like make contact.
Oh right, no, but eventually then I don't know. But it wouldn't have done any good. They would have died too. So.
I did actually like that. I thought that established some stakes. Though I thought that they were going to reveal, oh well, she transported out the other person in there or something. No, they did not.
Wait, it could still happen. I mean,
it could. I just
proof that it hasn't.
So, Fatheree, you've seen all 20. Maybe they do, but I have this feeling that.
Well, what did y'all think of Gwen running into the younger version of her father, the Diviner, when we meet Iltherin, the stargazer, the astronomer?
I totally waited for him to say, "Is Astrid and Peter with you?" Because it felt very like he felt like the character on Fringe, which was good. It was that sort of.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about because I have never seen Fringe.
I haven't seen it either.
Oh, okay. There was a woman named Astrid. I would have said Asteroid or something like that because he could never get her name right on purpose.
So that is the voice actor was on Fringe.
John Noble.
Gotcha. Well, this was one of my favorite things, Fatheree. I really liked seeing the Diviner before he was the Diviner, and his love is like really sincere and there, and he hasn't experienced tragedy yet, so he's like the good person he once was right out of the gate, and I did not expect that. Same as I didn't expect Essensia's villainy, I didn't expect his, empathy.
But also, what's interesting, he's like an astronomer on a planet of people who don't want to look to the stars. So that's kind of interesting too. Like, it
Yeah.
feels like he has a built-in. He's got that fork in the road sort of thing, where he could become the diviner, or he could become something much better.
And he also like he has his like literally like his head in the stars. He's like this like, you know, like dreaming type guy, like with like aspirational type dude. But like if he had been born on a Federation world, he probably would have been in Starfleet. If he's into like science and knowledge and exploring, like that's his jam. So he very much embodies like Star Trek values.
Yeah, he just he didn't have the encouragement and support of like his culture.
It raises some interesting questions about like how many like real life assholes, if you could like go back in time and like intervene, like they actually could have been like really decent people, and then you can like extrapolate that to like the next step, be like, what if I had to live through certain conditions? Would I become like this terrible thing that these other people are, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of truth to it, or like a lot we can learn from that sort of line of thinking. It forces us to drop notions that anyone is generally innately good or innately evil or anything like that, and that they do tend to be, yes, there's biological traits that inform us, but there's certainly a lot that comes from the environment in which we're brought up, raised.
It's also very Star Trek, just like, you know, there's a way to like find the good in somebody, or like, you know, there's not, like you said, it's like the reasons for what they're doing isn't just because I'm an evil scientist, you know. It's like so Essentia might be evil, but no.
You know, like,
even with her, like her motivations.
Her younger version looks really like. I'll wait for the next episode because there's a scene in there that I'll talk about.
So yeah, I really liked all the stuff with Diviner. I noticed, oh my gosh, I had to say her name, Nami Melimad, was doing some really good music that was very, you know, subtle around that scene with Gwen reunited with him. And it's so far, at least in the first 5 episodes, I guess I'd say it's one of my favorite things is their connection.
And you believed it too. It felt very believable.
Yeah, he's a good voice actor, you know? Yeah. Was it John Noble? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We get
I also
a lot
love that they see the, the robot, what is his name?
Dreadnought.
Dreadnought, yeah.
But he's like useful. Yeah, he's just like a little servant. Yeah, he's
like the keeper of the whatever.
He's like a librarian
or something. Yeah.
And they get like this like real convenient, you know, kind of ritual, the Valor, like that was like super convenient, like, it just so happens that, you know, I can't prove I'm a real Vonnegut because I was born off world and I showed up here, and, you know, Essentia has like a younger version of herself and can prove that she's from this planet. But it turns out there's like this very convenient ancient ritual that all I have to do is complete this, and then no one can deny that I'm a real true Vonnegut.
It feels very TOS/early TNG. It's got that, you know, there's always
a little bit of a pulp combat sort of thing, but not necessarily combat.
But then when I saw it in the next episode, in episode 3, when I actually see it, it looks neat enough. I was like, I kind of want like a Gwendala video game. I kind of want to. I like this. This
whole thing feels like it's set up to be video game. Like
there were definitely. I had those thoughts multiple times, and I was like, the first mission would be, you got to go find what's in Hangar 3 and all that stuff, and you got to sneak around the ship, and there's some stealth stuff in there.
Well, speaking of that, like the stuff on Voyager, they do a lot of explanation here. Janeway shows the security footage recovered from the Protostar. They found in the debris after the ship blew up at the end of season 1. They were able to recover the security footage from, I guess, like the outside of the ship that showed what happened to Chakotay, and how like, we can now go into the future through this wormhole that created at the end of season 1. We now have a possible route to save Chakotay, to rescue him from the future. And the temporal paradox thing where they have to wait long enough for Chakotay to send the Protostar back in time and keep those events intact. But I think they do a good job explaining all that stuff and explaining the importance of the mission, and it kind of made sense, like, okay, I can kind of get why, like, this would be, like, a risky thing that maybe, like, the brass would not be comfortable with, but of course Janeway wants to try to save Chakotay, and then here they give, like, the reason, they give the kids a reason to be really invested in Chakotay, that, like, by him sacrificing himself and sending his ship, his only means of escape, sending that out on its own, you know, into the unknown to get it away from the Federation where the Vonnegut can't use it, it turned out to be the salvation of these kids. It's how they escaped Tars Lamora. They never would have been able to do that without Chakotay sending it back. So, you know, they look at him as like their hero.
I really liked that scene and that tying them to him so explicitly and realizing how in his debt they were. What's kind of funny is, you know, I was one of the things when we talked about what we want to see in this season, I wanted to see the glow up for, you know, Chakotay was kind of one of my little side things I wanted. And I will say, in episodes 1 through 5, although we do see him, he's still a little bit of slightly the same boring Chakotay from Voyager. Yeah. But this scene kind of elevates him a little bit beyond at least what I've seen so far.
I don't know if the character is, maybe not the acting of the character, but yeah.
Right. But yeah, they properly framed it so that the kids have a real motivation to think about him as somebody who really did him a solid.
In that previous scene when we see the security footage, it is very, you know, Star Trek to have the security footage be able to cut and zoom in at different angles.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, so I asked Aaron about that because it's like that kind of feels like it was maybe done on purpose. But he said, it's like, what do you think those little cleaner robots are for? They take all the different viewpoints and they're out there flying around taking shots with the security camera.
Yeah, it's been like a Star Trek
out of danger.
It's been a Star Trek tradition since Court Martial, I guess. But yeah, like in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, you have Sarek and Kirk. They pop in the VHS tape of Wrath of Khan, and they fast forward to the Death of Spock scene, and like you can hear like little machine parts like moving around as like they're like it sounds like they're using some type of 23rd century VCR or something.
Yeah, I like. What was the? There's also the TOS episode with this like Hunt for Red October. What is it?
Balance of Terror?
Yeah, Balance of Terror. They also have like the way they can tap into the Romulan security footage, which also has like zooms and stuff.
Nicely edited.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever really sort of seen this addressed in sort of a canon way outside of fans is in the novelization of Star Trek the Motion Picture, when they mentioned essentially they had like probes that were following the tracking the Klingons right before the big cloud gets them, the V'ger cloud at the beginning. But in the movie, it's like the scenes that they're seeing on the screen are clearly like clips from the movie that we're watching.
Yeah.
Just one of those things, one of those Trek things.
So let me ask y'all, when the Nova Squad kids get into the secret hangar bay and Dal tries to move the ship, it's very apparent to the audience, I think, like, okay, that's not gonna like work out well, but it wasn't a way that like didn't really annoy me. I was kind of like, oh, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be where things get interesting, and I was excited to see. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what to expect from like the new kids or from Majel, and so I was kind of excited to see what happens with her. I kind of like that it's not like entirely like Dal's fault. Like it was kind of Magel's interference. She's the one who like nerve pinched Jankum, and then he fell on the button to make the ship take off. Yeah. And Janeway, I didn't catch this the first time, but in one of my rewatches, I did notice Janeway tells Tysus and the Doctor and Noam, like, just keep the ship primed and ready to go in case I need to do like a super fast like Chakotay. So it already had like pre-programmed Chakotay rescue mission ready to go. So it actually does make a lot of sense how this could have happened.
It's not like
again.
the kids just accidentally did all of the things that got
we hit the button that took us exactly where we need to. So
that's
a nice, good point, Fatheree. Good point.
I never want to see Dal RL stumble onto an experimental Starfleet ship and accidentally like get lost on it and start like a new adventure
That's
or something.
every series.
That can happen. Yeah, if there is a season 3, please do not do that. I love that there's a possibility of a season 3, and I would love for it to happen, but I don't want
We
that
already
to...
have our one thing that we don't want to see in season 3.
Absolutely. Yes,
Fatheree,
sir.
it'll if they do avoid it, it'll symbolize him kind of getting a little bit out of those awkward teenage stumbling years and maturing a little bit physically to the point where he doesn't just doofus bump into everything.
The only other thing I have on episode 2 was I did really start to get interested and respect Majel. I think her Vulcan hairstyle is a little... I know that's very radical for a Vulcan.
Very individual. Yeah,
I get that, like, for animation, you need like your characters to have like unique, recognizable profiles, and they kind of got to stand out. But
it fits her like very pointy face and stuff, and her ears, everything. It kind of like continues that whole thing.
Right, and it follows. She's got a little bit of a sharp personality, and it sort of fits that. It also, but she does look kind of like an anime character. That looks like an anime hairstyle. And if as we get to know her more, I think it'd be kind of neat if she mentions it a little bit, like that unique hair. Maybe it's something that's from her house, on Vulcan or something. But if nothing else, I think it's just kind of an interesting change up.
I really started.
Lurian doesn't say anything. I bet we'll never hear him say anything.
I really started to respect her when she dropped the telepathy on Zero and said, it seems you forget, Medusan, that a Vulcan's psychic senses are enhanced near other telepaths. I loved the way that was written. That sounded like such like a Spock type line or something from like the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I thought it was cool. I liked her as kind of like a rival for the kids.
And you can tell that they developed her personality, and the other two are not kind of like. As soon as they went in, they're like, okay, they're not going to end up going back in time with everybody else, just because they feel like they're sort of like her backup band or something.
Right. They're NPCs.
Yeah.
They're just the muscle. I did think the only other thing I was going to mention, Fatheree, was just that the Infinity's capabilities that they mention, it's got cloaking to prevent detection, and very importantly, temporal shielding, so that it's somewhat resistant to time paradoxes. Which, that's some real mumbo jumbo.
But no. Their temporal shielding was like a big thing in Year of Hell. When they were remember in Year of Hell when they were dealing with like the Chronom, Janeway had to develop the temporal shielding. So
I guess I would say it's clearly like created to be a handy plot point. Yeah. But it's not one I mind. I think it's actually pretty cool. That's the slightly pulp side of Star Trek sci-fi, which is sometimes you've got stuff that's just convenient or cool, for a plot line. So and they did a good job of setting it up. It's like I had a feeling when they mentioned that, I was like, oh, it's going to have to survive a paradox now, and that braces you for what's to come.
The one thing we didn't mention is the glowing ball that talked to the ship.
Right, first big mystery, I guess.
Yeah, like who is this? And to me, it reminded me very much of the I think it was like the second episode of Voyager too. Parallax. It's like, this is Captain Catherine Janeway to the ship near the quantum singularity. Do you need help? Because she had that same patter when she was talking to the ball.
And it warned them like not to go, right? Like all will be lost.
And then at the end when Dow started the ship's departure sequence premature, or I guess I should blame it on when Majel nerve pinched Jankum and started it. Let's not throw Dow under the bus.
Don't throw him under the Infinity.
The orb said, "Okay, Janeway, now's the time." And then earlier it was saying, like, don't go now. It's not the time. And she's like, yeah, I wasn't going to. I don't have any intention to. But...
Oh, yeah, that's right. And they had mentioned that the future Solum is, like, time synced with the present. So, like, if an hour goes by in the present, there's an hour that passes there. So that things are...
So that explains why things in the next two episodes work the way they work.
Yep, exactly.
And so that brings us to... Episode 3, Who Saves the Saviors? That's a fun, riff on Who Watches the Watchers. Mm-hmm. Aaron McNamara, directed by Sung Shin. Synopsis: traveling through the time rift, Dow and the crew search for Chakotay on Solemn with the support of her father. Gwen challenges Essentia. This is where Chakotay and Adric finally get some real screen time and get to be part of the story. So I like seeing the kids get to interact with them, and I loved the idea of like, oh look, it's a classic Star Trek time travel, predestination, causal time loop paradox thing. We were always meant to go back and do this. That's what they think.
Like yesteryear.
But it turns out like, no, that was incorrect, and you actually, by interfering, ruined everything and messed it up. I was like soul crushed at the end of this episode. I was like, oh no, that didn't go according to plan at all. What are they going to do now? I was kind of devastating.
Of these first 5 episodes, this felt like it was the Empire Strikes Back episode where they kind of lose on all counts and really get set back pretty badly. Gwyn loses her fight, not necessarily through her own fault, but she does, and they screw up the future, and the past simultaneously. But I thought it was very effective in that. Like you were talking about how you felt it, Fatheree, and I for sure did too. Like you feel like, oh, they're in a really bad spot right now.
And I think it might have been this episode where I started to kind of realize what I think is the theme of the season. But within like these first 5, I could feel it. In some ways, kind of more here than later. But I think it'll carry through. We'll see if y'all agree with me. But I feel like there's a big theme of not giving up hope, and even when things seem terrible, and even when things don't go according to plan, just like never throw in the towel. And even though like, okay, you were persistent, and then it still made things like even worse. That's still not an excuse to give up. You have to continue to hang on to hope, and you kind of see that start to resonate in episode 3, I think.
Yeah, well, you're not going to feel that until you've seen kind of how bad things can seem like they are.
Yeah,
and that's when this is where we got it. Although, as I'm looking at my notes, I saw something that kind of cracked me up. It was when they're imprisoned with Chakotay and how do you say it? Is it
Adric?
Adric, yeah.
Check out the beak on Adric.
This poor guy, he got treated just as a bird joke by Jankum. But the scene I wanted to mention real quick was just when they're trying to pretend that they don't know what they are, that they're just yeah. Well, what did they claim they were? That they were
Galactic Raiders?
Galactic Raiders, yeah. And Dal's trying to tell Chakotay that he's like, you don't need to tell us, we know. And then he realizes that, oh, he shouldn't say that. And then he kind of tries to go more in character. And he's like, your voice paints a vivid picture.
Yeah.
That made me laugh.
The voice choice for Adric was interesting because it's like a East Coast tough guy kind of.
Yeah, he was
okay.
I felt like he was going to kick their asses. I thought he was going to kick their asses for screwing up stuff.
Maybe that's the wingless Aurelians are more.
Oh, maybe they're self-conscious about not having wings, so they try to be a bit more tough.
Yeah,
I did laugh at a few of the Jankum Pog bird jokes. When he tried to apologize, like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to ruffle your feathers. Oh, that was pretty good.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you try not to do it, and then you just keep doing it. And it gets worse. I
laughed out loud.
For us to fly the coop, and Chakotay's like, well, that one wasn't that bad, or that one's pretty good.
I can't complain about it if it made me laugh out loud. And I wrote down that it made me laugh out loud. So,
in this, we start to, let's see, how do you say it? Magel? Dal gets kind of frustrated with her in this one because she's sort of being this very buzzkill person, and he's like, you're actually worse than Gwyn was.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought, oh, is this actually a little bit of a opposites attract thing, and they're going to suggest a connection between her and Dal? But just in the 5 that I've seen, I'm like, oh, it seems like that connection might be more between her and Zero.
Yeah.
Which I thought was cool.
Yeah. Although I did clock a hint of jealousy, I thought, maybe when Majel says something about, like, well, in order for your girlfriend to be or whatever, like how she was like referring to Gwyn, or like maybe not jealousy, but like a little dismissive of Gwyn at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Zero clearly into Magell.
Yes, 100%. There was no missing that sort of what.
It sort of reminded me a little bit of oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Saru and I can't remember her name. The
Vulcan.
Yeah,
his
a little bit of that kind of
future wife. Yeah,
Tarina.
Yeah,
Tarin, thank you.
Tarina.
Tarina, sorry.
Yeah, Zero was almost talking with some of that NRE new relationship energy even before, at least where I am. Nothing has happened. I don't know if it does in the course of the rest of the episodes or not. But it was very cute. It was very sweet. But I feel like in some ways Jankum got to be the kind of action star of this episode by surprising everybody with his cool remote piloted hand.
Yeah, he got
Thing.
to drive his hand like Thing from the Addams Family, and that was I didn't see that coming.
I also
Incidentally, that would be
well, maybe he can do this.
yeah, that was fun. This would be a cool part of the video game. You would have to do a little stealthing with the hand itself.
A
I
mini
like
game.
that a Dreek's tricorder, how it had like a cracked screen. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
That's made it seem like
Did
a
he
little bit more
hide it in his
realistic.
feathers or something? I wonder if that's how he got it in.
I don't want to think about how he hid that. I'm just glad that he was able to.
They showed it being unwrapped from like a little cloth kind of carrying thing, and I was just like, yeah, did he just like have that tucked under his feathers as like, oh, that's my toiletries? I don't.
He's the first officer on a Starfleet ship. He's a smart dude. He figured it out.
He figured it out. Yeah.
Maybe that's what we should ask Aaron if we ever get a chance to have him on the show.
Fair enough.
Oh, that always would be fun.
We
That'd
can
be great.
we can make a list of Aaron Waltke questions, and that can be top of the list.
He now is currently playing Warhammer, so he's not able to be with us in chat.
Is he playing the Warhammer miniatures game?
Yes.
You know? Okay, right on. But yeah, this is the episode where I felt like Essentia really her villainy was felt, and her kind of xenophobia she was fomenting among the people. That gave the episode some bite. It gave it some real world resonance, and in addition to that, it was a cool fight between them.
Yeah. I complained about it being like, oh, it's so convenient. You have like this ritual combat that, will solve your problem. But the execution of it was cool enough. Like the way that they can use, it's kind of like programmable matter in Discovery. The way like the Vonnegut, or like, I guess they're telepathically bonded to this material and they can just like forge it into anything and make these cool attack weapons. It's such a fun thing for animation where you can have animators come up with all kinds of cool creative stuff. I think it'd be a fun thing to have it like in a comic book. If you had like a comic book artist, like, here, any weapon, any shape you want to draw, artist, you can draw it.
Very Green Lantern.
Absolutely what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, maybe it'd be interesting if we had seen what happened to them in the 32nd century, and it turns out that they were the people who, like, designed programmable matter or something like that. So we find out that, yes, obviously they did make it nice with the Federation, and, kind of grew from there.
Oh, yeah, that'd be interesting. This is like the prototype of sort of what will become programmable matter.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool connection to make someday. I would love for a future Star Trek show or movie to connect those dots.
Yeah, if they found a way to.
This game kind of felt like the Tron identity discs a little bit, like the Tron grid games. It's not exactly the same, but they always had things that would change, and
okay,
and it has don't fall off the platform thing, and
By the way, you were talking about the a little bit of a mock time energy here, and I would love for somebody to go ahead and overdub the music. That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I will do that after the show.
I get so I did that for Discovery Season 1, the big fight in the Mirror Universe Palace ship with Jason Isaacs and Michelle Yeoh and Sonequa Martin Green.
Yeah.
But
really quick, a little ad for your fellow Texas podcasters. Jason from the Captain's Quadrant put together what would Star Trek V be with a laugh track. And it's hilarious. It actually works really well in a very scary kind of way.
Yeah, I would watch the whole movie like that.
Yeah, so it's like 15 minutes or something like that. It's quite a long time, so look it up if you get a chance.
By the way, if you do the overdub, I can already kind of hear it, like when they're going down, it's just that's the drum build up, the
yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. Okay. that's all. I think that's about all I've got on that episode. It was another strong one, and again, their Empire Strikes Back. I felt like.
Aaron, you have any?
She was Marty McFlying as she at the end, which I thought because she keeps becoming.
Yes.
So that bothered me. The way that she was time fading, like Marty McFly in Back to the Future, or how his siblings would vanish from the photograph. To me, that felt a little weird. I don't mind that in Back to the Future because I don't expect much from the time travel physics of that trilogy.
Yeah.
But with Star Trek, where we have a lot of time travel stories frequently, it kind of needs to have a little bit more consistency to it, and that seemed a little weird and a little not
too
quite
much of an homage, Fatheree.
But they do kind of explain why Gwen is in the situation is because of the wormhole is kind of what allows her to become Schrodinger's Gwen, where maybe she'll exist, maybe she won't. It was because as long as that wormhole was open, she was going to exist in kind of a maybe she's real, maybe she isn't type state. That kind of explained the weirdness. The first time I was watching it, I was like, well, maybe I'll headcanon their weird programmable matter might have some weird temporal properties because she's around a lot of it. That's why she was phasing in and out. But it
had a little bit of that. If you fell off through the thing, why didn't you fall through the ground?
Right, it's just right. It seems
and
inconsistent.
the planet's moving. Why wouldn't you? But it did allow them to, in the next episode, I guess, do something very Star Trekky, which is have the Doctor do the equivalent of a mobile emitter type of tech.
Yeah.
To keep
Well,
her
they
in
used
place.
that kind of in Voyager a couple times too, something similar. Real quick before we jump on to the next one, when Essentia climbs out of the hole, the look on young Essentia, keep doing that, sorry. The look on young Essentia's face is almost terrible.
Yeah. The young
really
one.
Interesting.
Yeah, she looks like she was rooting for Gwen. So
Yeah, I missed that. That's a cool catch.
Yeah, so I'm just oh, okay. So I wonder if that means in the future that if we'll have a Essentia on Sensia site fight or something.
Yeah, or just a come to Jesus heart to heart talk kind of thing.
Or that, yeah. You're getting advice from your younger, less jaded self.
So, episode 4, Temporal Mechanics 101, written by Keith Sweet II and directed by Ben Eban. Although separated by decades, the Infinity and the Voyager crew band together to save Gwen's life. A mysterious messenger reaches out to Gwen. But this episode, I was pretty nervous, when it started off because I was kind of devastated after the last episode. But by the end of this, I was how this ends with Murph talking to the mysterious future figure. I was so excited, and I was happy to be binge watching Monday morning when I got to that end of episode 4. I was so thankful that I was I can just go straight into episode 5. I was very, very engaged.
It's Schrodinger's Star Trek fan because it's very much I want to watch them, kind of just do this one at a time, and then there's also I want to watch all of them at once. So you can do both.
I mean, sometimes sometimes a good ending, you're just I have to know what happens next, and that's how I felt at the end of this one.
Yeah. I was is Murph talking to Kovich?
I was wondering that too.
Kovich Daniels, yeah. And I have gotten far enough, in that 5th episode
Jonathan
to see
Archer.
some big developments, right? Or Archer, some big developments with Murph. It's that I'm excited to see where all the things will go with him.
I need you to help us change our last episode.
This felt like this is the episode where is this the one where they kind of the Doctor helps him get Gwen stabilized and all that.
Starts with that, right?
I think
That's
so.
at the end of the last one.
That's in episode 5. Episode 4 is mainly just them just getting Gwen from recovered onto their ship onto the Infinity.
Okay, but they get a little bit of a breather after the last episode's very dire events because they're all at least united now, and which I liked. I was they get to see Janeway good. They're in the same room talking to each other.
They're able. This episode is before they're in the same room as Janeway, but they're able to call her in the past from their 52 years in the future. They're able to communicate with the Voyager, and they basically they tell Janeway their plan. They're going to take their ship back in time, get Gwen, and then come join them on board.
Right.
And it was convenient, I guess not for the shuttle pilot, but for the Sacagawea to be destroyed because isn't that what, like, the Voyager A can go... Well, no, I guess they don't leave this wormhole till they destroy it. But eventually they do head off en route towards Solemn, and they meet up with the kids on the Infinity. Because poor Jankum is in a situation where he's like, I can't get this ship to fly, and Dow's like, that's okay, it doesn't need to fly. We're going to use it to time travel. We can siphon off energy from the wormhole. We can make this into a time machine. Jankum's like, okay, cool. They take the ship back in time, and then they're like, okay, Jankum, now we need you to fly there. He's like, I can't fly. It's never going to fly again. I turned it to a time machine.
He has one of my...
Speaking of, it looked like, if you, at certain angles, it looked like the time machine from Back to the Future. It looked like the DeLorean with all the extra stuff.
Yeah, you pointed that out off mic, and I was like, oh, for sure. And I had noticed some of the parallels, but I hadn't noticed it so specifically as that.
It was just that one scene, and that angle. I was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I didn't think DeLorean, but I did think the Nebuchadnezzar hover ship from The Matrix is what it looked like to me.
Yeah, it's got all the kind of those little tech boxes.
The little things in the back are just like the engines are like like you said, the Bajoran fighters and the Star Trek or Starfleet fighter jet, not fighter jets, whatever they called them.
The Maquis fighter craft things. But I like that it showed time travel was difficult. Like even when they had like this wormhole they could siphon off that temporal energy from, it was still kind of a pain in the ass to get their ship to time travel, and they still had to get a lot of help from mysterious observer in the future helping them.
And Dr. Is this where we saw like the Temporal Mechanics 101 actual video?
Yeah, with actual like Dr. Aaron, who I guess plays herself, Aaron McDonald, science consultant.
How cool is that for them? Yeah, the show's, am I correct? The show's science consultant for the last many years, right? Got to play kind of herself doing that.
Anybody who plays the drinking game that every time I talk about improv, they drink. She used to critique our science after our improv shows. So it was very funny to go from like our horrible science to like attempting to be real. Like if you're doing it on the fly and you're on stage, it's just it's never going to be great. Our show ended with somebody going back in time to Wolf 359, and that was where the cliffhanger was. And then COVID happened, and they're still stuck there, I guess.
They the time travel in this, I guess they mentioned a lot of classic Trek in there. This was one of those very tongue-in-cheek videos, sort of like the, what do they call it in Jurassic Park, the Mr. DNA.
Dino DNA.
It did not feel like a collegiate level course.
No.
That's what I meant. Guess they found the right that and then make Time Machine. Like, okay.
They found the right one for Dal. It has a little bit of the Fallout Pip-Boy vibe.
It can adjust to like whatever like reading level. And, like I was like, oh okay, I'm gonna dial it down to like second grade for this dum-dum. But
I wanted to just quick rewind on Jankum's frustration. I wrote it down because it was such a fun line. He's struggling to be the kind of somewhat more polite, less crude guy, and he's like, Jankum politely requests a little more time. So super fun. I feel like they heard my request because I had a tough time finding anything I didn't want to see in the season when we did that show, and I was just like, well, just less crudity maybe, and they're like, oh, Jankum's trying to keep that down, and I was like, well, they heard me, and now I feel kind of bad. Jankum's clearly struggling.
Well, maybe he'll revert. We'll just have to
maybe
watch
I've got 15 episodes to see, and he was already feeling a little bit like he was declaring he was done being polite at either this episode or next.
It was interesting that everybody seems to know who Worf is, because it's like Lieutenant Worf went through this blah blah blah. It's like not a Lieutenant Worf or this person named Lieutenant Worf. It's just like in Lower Decks they do the same thing. So I guess apparently he's just a really well-known person in Starfleet.
It makes sense that you, both for the Starfleet, as the first Klingon in Starfleet, but also for his role in various Klingon politics and leadership rights and things like that.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked that. Oh, but as I'm skimming through my notes, and I see also I mentioned in this unrelated, but speaking, we talked about Asensia's villainy. She's specifically in this pushing for a more militarized Solon, let's gear up and prepare.
What a relevant voice to give your bad guy.
Yeah. Who could have guessed?
But seriously,
that's not current.
That's something that we're going to see more and more of. I think just things like climate change, and the world is moving in a direction towards border security and a lot of racial anxiety and a lot of people in a lot of countries just being like, oh, I just want to be scared of the rest of the world, and I just want to set up a build big walls and big armies to protect me and go against everyone else. And it's you can see how a very benign society can fall prey to their own fears and become a very malicious force.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty universal message, to be honest. It's this is a playbook that has been utilized by panicked, power-hungry individuals in the middle of a panicked populace, usually experiencing economic strife and since the dawn of history, really, for millennia. It's a pretty classic playbook for fascists.
That's the one thing that I didn't quite understand. It's like they don't seem to be having any kind of major issues for her to go in and prey on those things. Like, what besides you don't like outsiders?
Well, she had some proof of the future. Like, she was showing the holograms. Like, this is going to be our planet in 52 years if y'all meet the Federation.
I sort of agree with you, though, Aaron. It's we don't see any traditional issues going on. Why are they already xenophobic and primed for her? Well, I think the show didn't want to get too granular on that. Yeah. And I think they were just that's the place they are. This is a fairly suspicious people. And they don't want to, they don't want to look beyond their borders. They're, just in general, xenophobia was already percolating for them. And then... she just took advantage.
It wasn't like there was famine or anything like that, though. There didn't seem to be any huge external forces like that.
It is kind of weird. They don't even believe in aliens, and then as soon as they hear about them, they're very xenophobic all of a sudden. But I guess she was there long enough that I think she started enhancing their weapon technology and getting them prepared to they clearly have no problem taking down a Federation shuttle, if they can catch it off guard. So they're ready to go to war. They're ready for some combat with Starfleet.
I also like that it was in the atmosphere, because I'm assuming they don't have spaceships because they're.
I don't know. They did have kind of what we usually think of as futuristic tech with didn't they have hover bikes and stuff?
Yeah. Guess how Dow was using those as a distraction in episode 3 to help Chakotay when he's like, "Look how distracting I am."
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that was a Star Trek Beyond thing, right? When Chris Pine causes the distraction on the dirt bike.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, the shuttle got blown up in the atmosphere when you see it. It didn't seem like where they're.
I wonder if they have some kind of low level, some early tech, and they just don't care about getting out into space, but they could get up there when they need to.
Yeah. But I could just be analyzing that part of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, to some degree they're not going to do too deep a dive on this culture. I sort of wish they would show a little bit more of them. They did have
novelizations.
Yeah, right. What was it? When they did do the ceremony where Gwyn fought Essentia, I guess wasn't there some indication that you might not have to fight, but man, it became a fight real fast. And it was essentially trial by combat, right? When you characterize it that way?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess we see that this is, these are fairly martial-minded people.
But they said that was something they hadn't done in millennia. That was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's ancient. That's true. Well, it's always good to go back to the old ways, right? That was them going back to the 1950s when things were real good.
There were a couple of lines that stood out to me in episode 4. I liked Majel saying it is never too late to abandon a bad idea. That's very true.
Yeah.
It's
actually I'm a doctor, not an exorcist.
That was a good one.
It's kind of an upbeat statement from Majel, but kind of It also has a little bit of Vulcan pessimism in it too. Like it suggests that there's a lot of bad ideas people stick to way too long.
Yeah.
But it's still a good thing to stop it. So, I liked it. It really felt like it fit her.
And I liked
nerd is still a phrase in the 24th century. It's like, enough of this nerd talk. I'm like, oh wow, okay.
That's just the universal translator getting it for us.
Oh, okay.
I liked Dal using Zero as a flashlight. I thought that was funny.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, not again.
just kind of turned them. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't have in very few of these episodes do I have any serious complaints. I did find it was like a little too tropey. I thought when Jankum did the fist pound kind of Fonzie style that reactivated the ship, it was a little too much.
But that was him getting back to his percussive maintenance. It was like Jankum going back to his roots.
I guess that's true. That's a fair point there. And with that in mind, I kind of like it a little better.
I don't have it.
And Dr. McDonald or Aaron says, it's like, so you want to build a time machine? Are you sure about that?
Right.
That's how it should be, though. If you are a Starfleet officer, and there's a situation where time travel might be your best option, it should be like, okay, this is extremely not advised, but if you're gonna try it, here's the information we have on how to time travel. Good luck.
Yeah.
You're probably gonna die.
Or not be born, ever.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. Are y'all ready to go to our final episode of the evening, Season 2, Episode 5, Observer's Paradox?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it.
This one was written by Jennifer Murrow, directed by Roland Lee and Andrew Schmidt. Reunited on Voyager and under strict supervision, the gang must decode a secret message their mysterious benefactor left with Murph. I loved hearing the Murph speak. We get like a little bit of Murph translation. We can't handle too much. You just get like a little bit of quick like disco bounce Saturday. Whatever he's saying. But like just that little bit there, that little glimpse into his mind, I think explained so much of what I was curious about. Like what I'm saying. Like what is Murph's intelligent level? Just like I guess that's what I wanted to know. Is like I kind of get him now. He makes more sense to me. He's just like a really like hyperactive kid who wants to go play video games. That's like his security training in the holodeck is like him playing video games. But I really liked that Murph stuff, and I loved Jillian the Will. I thought was great. It's just like, man, how does the show keep coming up with like so many new incredible ways to make me love it even more? But like, yeah, a humpback whale like Star Trek 4 named Jillian, like I'm in Cetacean Ops. It's perfect. I loved that chef's kiss.
I read somebody, I think it was like on Instagram or something, a response to the restart of the series, that they have a child that is nonverbal, and the fact that they treat Murph like, just because he's nonverbal doesn't mean he's dumb.
Right.
And like, she's like, I just found that really spoke to me, and I thought that was like that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy that Star Trek can do.
I know that it wasn't like it's not in every instance intended as such, but like Trek has ended up with through many of its characters being so, I think, really good to the neurodivergent community that is honestly one of the coolest things Trek ever did. Going back to Spock, but whether it's Data or Barclay or something, or Murph, there's these characters that people identify with because they reflect something so well in our real world, and the characters are always maybe not originally with Barclay, but they're almost always very accepting and nurturing, and it's like, yes, we may have occasionally some confusion or some issues, but you are considered part of the team, and and valued, and very valued. Fatheree, you mentioned Cetacean Ops, which was amazingly visualized in this. Clearly, many stories tall in the ship. It must fill a section, one of the tallest areas of the ship, multiple floor decks. I think
if you look at the what is it, the MD, the side view.
Yeah.
I thought at first it was like, oh, there's a Protostar drive and a regular drive, but I think what I thought was the Protostar drive, the big area, is probably this.
Is the well tank?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Cetacean Ops is one of those things that's slightly weird for me. I know its history, going back to, I believe, one of those like the books, right? There's
technical manual.
Yeah. And but I was like, while I thought it was kind of a fun in-joke,
It is mentioned on screen, though, in Next Generation. It's mentioned, Cetacean Ops.
Right. But I think I've never
as they're walking
really
away. And
liked the idea. I never wanted to see it implemented because it felt too much to me like, oh, something from just another sci-fi series. It didn't seem very Star Trek to have whales and dolphins or whatever.
Sequest.
Right, it felt like Sequest. And but I have to say, this is the first major thing. I believe they've done maybe some stuff with it in Lower Decks that I haven't seen. This was the first major instance I've seen of it, a representation, and they did it so well that they kind of went and then they sold me on it.
Yeah, in Lower Decks they have a couple of belugas on the California class ship, but on the big ass Lamar class, you can have a humpback whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. That got to meet
Jillian.
with. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I said it's good timing. There's a book coming out, I think on the 23rd, from Greg Cox, that is somebody who's doing a true crime podcast about the disappearance of Jillian Taylor. So it's the story, and they track that down, and it somehow connects to a story in the 21st century or 23rd century.
Right.
So
I remember.
Good timing.
Yeah, this got talked about, on our show very briefly.
Yeah, I hate
ago.
that it's an official idea and not something that I thought of, and we could do like a mockumentary type podcast about this mysterious disappearance of a marine biologist in 1986 San Francisco.
They don't have I asked it, oh, they're going to do a podcast? That would be perfect. And it's like, no, they don't.
Like
they don't understand podcast or
podcast,
whatever.
yeah.
I'm like, we need to do it then.
Yeah, it's a fun concept. I will definitely be looking into that. Yeah. But yeah, I loved the look of Cetacean Ops. I loved all the ideas that were going on around there. And
how Murph changed when he got in the water.
Yeah, Mermaid Murph. What do y'all think of
to see the
merman?
A
Murph-maid. Yeah, I love seeing a third form for Murph, and also like how gentle Rock was in leading Murph into this adventure, because Murph was scared of the whale, and but
yeah,
what was cool when Murph got into the water. The way he reacted was the way, if you've ever seen the first time a penguin or an otter or something goes into the water, and they go from being kind of clumsy on land to just shooting around in the water they've been there their whole life. And Murph did that, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was cool to see him kind of have a new experience. And then I liked when he tries to communicate, and just that idea. He's kind of like dyslexic Spock in season 2 of Discovery, but he has the information. He has the information, but it has to be decoded. I don't know. I really liked all of that, and just how the story, them putting in all that effort to communicate with them. We talked a lot about how communication was a big theme in season 1, and Dave, I remember you mentioning that you hoped that it would carry over into season 2, and we still see a lot of communication here. It's I mean, that happened. Gwen is a communications officer, is her skill set. That's her. Dad used her as the translator. They didn't have universal translator technology on Tars Lamora. She had to do all the translating herself. So I guess that's why we're probably always going to have a lot of communication come up in Prodigy, as long as Gwen is a main character. But
arguably a bit of a nice counterbalance. I mean, they've been doing it since then, but Uhura, somewhat infamously, although, it was for sure forward movement at the time, didn't have as much cool stuff to do as would have been nice.
They tried to give Hoshi some cool linguistic stuff in Enterprise, but
I think the difficulty is, it is hard to translation is not the coolest thing to be showing in a sort of adventure-oriented series, so you have to work with it a little bit, and I think a show that's a little larger than life like this gives them these interesting opportunities where the universal translator actually isn't nuanced enough for it, but this whale with its kind of complex language of sounds, it can do it. And so yeah, that might seem a little much on one of their live action shows, but here on this show it felt very fitting, and yeah, allowed this really neat moment of sort of sci-fi communication breakthrough.
Also,
even to the point
Bonnie
where
Gordon, since she's the ship's computer, translated through the
That's
ship's
true.
computer, basically.
That's true. Yeah.
I was hoping that number was an anagram or whatever it was for numbers of the Paramount or the local pizza place that they ordered from or something. But it
that was kind of weird. The number, I get the Find Me thing where the Fin D Me as Dal thought it was going to be, but.
I feel like that would have been me doing like just throwing out guesses, boom, 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 and then suddenly, and you're just like, this is the stupidest stuff.
The numbers didn't really
Fragile.
mean much. It was just like, oh, just like type this into your device the doctor gave you in the same
Yeah.
episode, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, I sort of assumed that the numbers were going to be some sort of anagram as well, but maybe on mathematics it's a little bit cleaner for Murph. Maybe that's a little bit more universal and not as confusing as other concepts.
But it gets Gwen back in, I don't know, the cosmic trippy dream state she was in before, and she's able to communicate with whatever mysterious force from the future is talking to them.
Yeah.
And we learned that the spirally thing is a map that they believe will take them to Chakotay.
Isn't that his little the design that he had on something at one point?
Yeah, so that
looked like
comes
it.
from the episode Cathexis, where
Oh, yeah.
Chakotay could make his Native American spirit fly around the ship, I guess.
Yeah.
But B'Elanna used the stone with that spiral on it to guide him or something.
Oh yeah, that's something. With
you
the
know,
dream
for better or
catcher and
worse,
everything or whatever.
It is that this is something from Chakotay's lore and stuff like that, and so I can appreciate them working with it.
We saw the spiral before, though. When they left the diviner on Tars Lamora, he was drawing that spiral when he was like driven mad after he looked at Zero before Janeway rescued him.
Wait, when?
What?
When the kids leave the diviner, season 1, episode 10, Amoral Star Part 2. When they've defeated him, he's stared into Zero and gone mad, and they leave him on Tars Lamora with all of his prisoners gone. He's like in his like insane state. He's drawing the spiral on the ground.
Presumably just because like he knows of Chakotay, right?
Right, because he's from that 52 year in the future. Like
Right.
he only came back in time to find the Protostar after Chakotay sent it off.
Right. So it probably represented at the time his obsession with stopping Chakotay or whatever.
You're getting the Protostar back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, I didn't realize that as far back as the first season they had acknowledged it. That's pretty cool. That's some foreshadowing. That's some next level foreshadowing.
Poor Zero in this episode has to distract the Doctor and hear about his this terrible Hollow novel about a.
He needs what is it? Pay. What is it? Combat pay or something?
Yes, absolutely.
Hazard pay.
Hazard pay. Thank you. That's the word.
And this would be a good point to say. What's his name? Robert Picardo.
Yes.
Very effortlessly stepped back into the egotism and then the kind of that upbeat egotism of the Doctor. Always like, I've got an idea. I've got just the thing.
Which Bob Picardo will tell you. He's like, yeah, I am really great at playing self-absorbed characters who have absolutely no idea how big of a nuisance they're being to everyone around them. I have no idea why I'm so good at that, but that seems to be my gift.
You know what? That's still a gift. A gift is a gift. But yes, we get poor Zero having to traipse around, distracting him, while they send Gwen into a trippy 2001 sequence.
Is it me or is the story that he's explaining kind of sound a little bit like the copies on Picard season 1 of what's his name?
Oh, of Rios, right?
Rios, yeah.
Yeah, his multiple selves.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a few things going on in there.
I just thought of something funny, but I'll wait until next week and see if I remember. But there's something that happens in episodes 6 through 10. I'll be like, oh well, maybe this inspires some of Rios's choices.
Okay.
With his holograms in Star Trek Picard season 1. That's all I'll say.
I definitely noticed when the Doctor said, "I haven't seen a crew this dysfunctional since the Cerritos."
Yeah, that was a nice reference.
I am hoping that means that we see in season 5 the Doctor on lower decks.
Oh, has he not shown? I just assumed it was like a reference.
Not yet, but maybe season 5. It's likely the writers. We know that they talk to each other. They show each other their scripts for the upcoming seasons, or they're able to do those types of things. So.
They were like, why do you think all of our plot lines were about AI? You know, just like.
I loved that Doctor actually had a bunch of fun stuff in this one. He was trying to calm the kids down, and he talked about his program for like anti-anxiety for Academy hopefuls, aka
Yeah.
I was like, why are they called hopefuls instead of applicants? Like, shouldn't Janeway be calling them applicants? And then I was like, oh, maybe for this joke to work, they had to be called hopefuls.
Sometimes you go a long way for a setup.
That would be what they'd be otherwise.
Yes.
There's no H on the end.
Yeah, they wanted the H on the end.
Yeah.
You know what? One of the kind of neat things that they set up in this that from the first episode that I thought was a nice unexpected thing was that Rock Talk kind of found herself kind of the establishment person, you know, really wanting to fit in by the book because this was the first time she felt she fit in. And so she's real protective of it, very understandably so. And Dal is still Dal. And so it's like her she's like order versus his chaos. And they're you know, in the end, she's with her friends in this episode, and she'll back them.
But I like that conflict. That's a good conflict
so
between them. Yeah,
a good and unexpected one. That was the show surprising me with a neat idea.
It made me realize, like, yesterday I saw my my sister's kids, and it made me realize, like, oh yeah, like her 2-year-old is Murph. He's just like always like a bunch of energy and just like won't stop running around and destroying things. And then her 8-year-old is like Rock Talk. She's like, I just want to be like a good girl who makes good grades. It was funny to see them like, oh yeah, like there's clear there's clear personalities that these kids are representing on the show.
I thought it was interesting, like, what they need is more supervision. Really? It took endangering like an entire timeline for you to figure that out? Tom Paris had more supervision.
And I like that they're able to outsmart the Doctor. And it's kind of like that Simpsons things of like when kids are smarter than adults. But like sometimes they kind of are.
Pops in. I don't know why he's still wearing his mobile emitter when he goes from parts of maybe it's like part of his design now.
Yeah, he likes to show it off, I guess.
Yeah, but I thought that was hilarious. It was just like, every time he shows up.
Fashion statement. Yeah, that's right. It's just like popping right behind him.
And then they just have to kind of like, let's pretend we were talking about something else.
But the episode, by the end of it, Jellicoe forces Janeway to destroy the wormhole, and the Doctor has like that cool line about hope is never foolish.
Yeah, it's you know, I was glad the Doctor. I never want him to be just comedic, right? And I don't think they were intending to ever be that the case. But he's got to have some wisdom amidst the pomposity, and that was a really, really very lovely moment of it.
Are we doing Gorn eggs for this? I won't. If you are, I won't say anything about.
No, but we don't have a Gorn egg section, but okay. We can have Star Trek bingo instead. But what do you got, Aaron? What?
Well, I was gonna say when we saw her get the rock from like her little wall that has all of her mementos on it, there was a picture of her and Molly, or maybe one of Molly's puppies, on there, and there was also like the Arachnia spider hair thing that she had framed. So she had like the Captain Proton.
Yeah, I noticed the spider thing wasn't.
Yeah.
I did not know what that was.
Yeah, it was like I think it's like a hair clip or something from from that episode.
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of cool. There's like a couple little things sprinkled in there, but it looked like the picture of her and Mark and Molly, but like Mark has just been digitally removed.
That's what I like. Yeah, I like the idea of that as a possibility. When you suggested that, I thought that was kind of funny.
Computer, remove the almost husband. No.
Yeah, we won't have time for Gorn eggs as we're talking about Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, but writer producer Aaron Welke did mention. And I even like reached out to him and like, are you sure about this? And he said yes. But he mentioned that Season 2 of Prodigy will contain references to every single Star Trek show and movie. So I was kind of skeptical when I heard that because I was like, there's like a lot of stuff. Like maybe get all the shows. Like, are you really going to be able to get all the movies? And it's like, after I saw these first 5 episodes, though, I could already check off a lot of stuff off of the bingo card. So I don't know if y'all might have seen some stuff that I didn't, but I think just after these first 5 episodes, I can take off a all the legacy era Star Trek, the original series. We had Rock talking about Tribbles and Lieutenant Larkin, so that's Short Treks too. The Trouble with Edward Larkin.
Yeah.
The animated series, we have an Aurelian. We have Jillian, the Humpback Whale, Star Trek 4. There's so I think that TNG, Deep Space Nine. We had Bell Riots, lots of Voyager stuff.
Yeah.
For Star Trek Picard, they talk about the Romulan evacuation. Actually, that would be Star Trek '09 too, because Romulan supernova. That actually is like a Star Trek '09 thing.
Yeah.
The Cochrane warp experiments, that takes care of Star Trek First Contact. The cloaked ship was like Star Trek Insurrection. So and
I do know a couple of the ones from the ones I've watched forward. So I'm like, oh, nope, that's not happening. So.
Yeah, so I think here we can cross off TOS, TAS, Star Trek 4, TNG, First Contact, Insurrection, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, because like the mysterious communications from the future, Beyond, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Lower Decks because of the Cerritos reference, and obviously Prodigy references itself. But so that crosses off a lot. I had a bingo card of 25 things. Instead of a free square, I had like 47, and they gave us a 47 in these 5. They have Chakotay's service number is 47 Alpha 612 on screen.
Nice.
And that actually came from a Voyager episode in the flesh. So
Oh yeah.
Jill is asking the same question I have, Fatheree. What was the Star Trek Beyond reference?
The motorcycle distraction prison escape.
Okay, yeah, kind of a callback to it. For people who are listening and not watching this, there's Fatheree literally has a bingo card visual up of all the titles of the various movies and shows.
And the number 47.
Yeah, and 47 in the center, and we got lines through, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, just in these first 5
and
episodes.
I think I should cross out Star Trek '09 too because of the Romulan evacuation or Romulan supernova.
Yeah, that's fair. That was the introduction of the
Yeah,
concept.
so I think we're gonna hit a bingo almost certainly. I think we might black it out, but
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
What do
we
we
can really
win?
rack up some points that way.
yeah, I don't know what maybe we'll win season 3, but that's up to Netflix. So everyone, make sure that you're streaming Prodigy.
Yes.
Make sure that your friends are streaming Prodigy. We really want Netflix to give us a season 3.
Heck yeah.
It seems to be getting really good response. Like I've seen a lot of arguments.
have-
This is the best Trek has been in X amount of years, and
I have not seen anybody griping about it. I know if I look a little bit, I probably can find it. But like in my circles, at least, it's been pretty much all enthusiastic. Woo!
Yeah.
And that's pretty much where I am. I was very happy to return. Aaron, are you in that place? Are you enjoying it?
yes, It's one of those things like I said, I'm kind of the two minds of like I want to watch all of it and I don't want to watch it. I want to like meter it out. So
Right.
But it's very hard when you have access to all 20 of them to stop. So I'm up to 10, not because I wanted to stop, but just because of all the other stuff I was doing. But yeah, no, I'm really loving it. It feels like a natural extension of the first. Stuff that was set up in season 1 pays off here, but it doesn't feel rote. It just feels like, okay, this is an organic growth of these characters.
Yeah,
Especially with Rock Talk and stuff like where it's like little things that have grown into bigger personality traits, which is interesting because that's what happens when you're young and
That's true. And yeah, I feel like every episode I see, I'm like, yes, I knew they were going to go forward and try and rescue Chakotay. I knew that was kind of built into the season, but none of the specifics are things I'm exactly guessing. Certainly didn't guess that Murph would go into cetacean ops, become an aquatic version of himself, his third evolution. And
he's growing on me that version as opposed to because I originally liked the non-bipedal version of him, but he's being more expressive now.
Yeah, I will be anxious to see where that goes. And we end this on kind of a cliffhanger with Gwyn having kind of been imparted some big information. It seems like.
Yeah, but no, they have an objective. They think like, oh, we think if we go here, we'll get Chakotay. So they have a destination. They have a goal. They have an objective. I'm really looking forward to next week and the next 5 episodes. I like 6 through 10 even more than 1 through 5. There's some big things that happen.
It's hard not to reference some of the stuff that's happening. That's another reason I don't really want to watch all of it, because it's too easy. Right. Like, oh, remember when X, Y, and Z happened? No, that has not happened yet.
But yeah, I had to double check and make sure. Like they do call him the Stargazer in these 5, right? So I'm not giving anything away by pointing that out, right? But yeah, that'll be a lot of fun when we get to 6 through 10. So
I like Jill's comment. It's like, I'm still waiting to find out why Melanoid Slime Worm was such a big insult in TNG.
Oh yeah.
Well, maybe that dude was trying to say he thought Wesley was a cute little cuddly thing. I don't know. But...
It's their way of flirting in this society.
But looking forward to having another round of episodes to talk about next week. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.